Friends, in the last couple of days, the news of SCB award went viral, and I had so many requests from friends that they would like to know what the award winning work was about. So I'm going to summarize very briefly what has happened so far, what's being done right now, and where is it likely to go. This is essentially about human wildlife conflict, but a relatively neglected part of human wildlife conflict. A lot has been talked about tigers and other carnivores, cattle kills, and so on. So, carnivore conflict has been the focus of interest by media, by people, by wildlife researchers, and so on. But economically, far more greater is the damage to crops by herbivores. And there are large herbivores like elephants, small herbivores like wild boar, nilgai, and so many others. And actually, the economically, the crop damage is 100 times costlier than the carnivore damage. Then, among the herbivores, there is a big difference between damage caused by elephants, which is very clean. Clean in the sense that whenever they damage something, they completely bring down everything. So it is easier to measure the area that is damaged. The damage by smaller herbivores like wild boar is very scattered. Nilgai just gnaw at the tips, or wild boar trample something here, eat something there, gnaw something there, and so on. And this is extremely difficult to measure. And so the methods developed for elephants are not applicable for wild boar, for example, and it is absolutely unaccessible. Okay, how much damage is caused by wild boar? Nobody is able to guess. Nobody is able to. So, our work is precisely in this regard about crop damage by wild herbivores, and it can be divided into clearly two phases. The prior phase was about studying and understanding the problem, and then the current phase is about implementing a solution, and it's essentially a teamwork. A large number of people were involved in the first phase, and an equally or even greater number of people and organizations are involved in the second phase of the work. And I should particularly mention, I won't name everyone because the names are just too many, and I'm not sure I haven't forgotten any names. But I will certainly mention the organizers, the organizations which supported us, namely the Vidarbha Development Board, the RRA network, the DeFries Bajpayee Foundation, then CPC Nagpur, Paryavaran Mitra, the NAM Foundation, and recently the Maharashtra Knowledge Corporation Limited has been added to the list. Okay, so although I was a recipient of the award, it is essentially a teamwork and a large number of people, and it was I owe the success to the entire team. Well, in the first phase, what we did was an attempt to precisely estimate how much was the damage, because this kind of data, this kind of information was simply not there. Our effort was in a small area on the western boundary of Tadoba, and we did a number of things. I will not go to the entire data because it has been published, and the reference is here. So anyone interested can go to the original paper, but I will briefly go through what we have been doing. So one way of estimating how much the damage close to the forest is to compare the total crop yield near the forest as compared to away from the forest. So as you go away from the forest, this is distance in terms of kilometers, you will see that for most of the crops and most of the seasons, there is an increasing trend as you go away from the forest. And on an average, the crop produced near the forest doubles as you go about 5 kilometers away from the forest. Okay, which means that there is a difference of twofold. We looked at so many things. Currently, so what you see here is an attempt. This is wild boar damage. So what you see here is an attempt to measure how much area is damaged and try to estimate how much is the damage in terms of rupees. Now, this is being regularly done by the forest department whenever the farmers complain. And here we look at the correlation between the estimate done by visual inspection and trying to measure the area damaged versus the actual loss in grain yield, and you can see that there is hardly any correlation between the two. Okay, which means that the damage estimated this way is not very reliable. Okay. Then we estimate the damage in a variety of ways. For example, here is a direct comparison between a fenced and non-fenced field just in the neighborhood. Okay, and you can see that for all crops, now there were a couple of seasons where the crop failed, like here or here, but for all other seasons where farmers were able to grow the crop, there is a huge difference between the fenced and unfenced farm. And quite often, particularly in the Rabi season, if you keep a field unguarded and unprotected, there is 100% loss. On the other hand, if they guard it manually, then they might at the most save 50. Okay. Then we did a number of experiments by actually cutting the crop, and what happens is if there is damage, then there is regeneration. And because of the regeneration, the field might again look green, but the grain yield definitely suffers. So for what you see here, for example, is after having cut and allowed to regrow, it does regrow, but the number of grains, the number of seeds come down substantially. So when you look at the farm, it might look green, but if it was damaged in the past and regenerated, the grain yield suffers. Then we also looked at the economics of farmers and the economics of the animals that come and raid. Okay, because animals have also have their own economics. Now, I will again, this is again published, and I will not go into the details because any interested one can go to the publications. What we see here is when faced with the risk of damage, the farmers tend to disinvest from the farm. Okay, so they are something like trying to minimize the maximum loss if animals eat up the entire thing, and therefore they disinvest. So what you see here is as you go away from the forest, the use of fertilizers increases, right? So farmers close to the forest are not very keen to spend money on fertilizers and other things. So they try to grow things at the minimum cost. Okay. And the damage or the loss because of disinvestment actually turns out to be greater than what animals have actually eaten. Then we also do the economics of animals because they are also optimizers. So they also have a cost and a risk in entering agriculture fields, and they have a gain, they have a nutritional gain because they get crops which are edible, which are high nutritious species. But now look at one thing out of this study. If you make a fence, okay, then the cost of entering the farm or the risk of entering the farm increases. And as the efficiency of your fence goes up, the cost goes on increasing, right? Now, but the damage does not come down linearly. And this is because if the cost of entering is more, then the animals cannot afford to eat very little and come out. Okay, if you pay greater cost, then you would expect greater returns, right? So in Hindi we call this paisa vasool. Okay, so animals also have this paisa vasool logic. So if you make a fence, the cost of entering the farm increases, and therefore animals need to eat more in order to compensate for the cost. Okay, so the things are not as straightforward. Okay, you can't assume that you make a fence and it takes care of everything. It doesn't. Okay, so to summarize the important findings from the study, if not actively guarded, then 60% of rice and 100% of rabi crops are lost. But farmers guard by being there all through the night and trying to drive away animals. Now, when they do active guarding, then they can save about 50%. 50% is lost in spite of guarding. Okay, this is close to the forest. As you go away from the forest, of course, there is some reduction. Okay, then fences and other protection measures are of very limited success. Then there is a law which enables compensation. So a farmer that is close to a protected area and whose crop is damaged by wild animals, the law says that the forest department in Maharashtra, the implementation is slightly different in different states, but in Maharashtra it is the forest department that needs to compensate, but it looks like less than 1% of the farmers claim for compensation. Okay, so 99% of the times the compensation is, the loss is not even on the record. Then visual inspection of damage is unreliable, it doesn't work, and the problem is widespread throughout the state. What you see here is that the forests are distributed like this. Agriculture is distributed everywhere, but the damage is not restricted to the forest areas because from areas like Aurangabad, Ahmednagar, Beer, there have been substantial number of complaints. Okay. So which means that wild boar, peacocks, um, black buck have been there in these areas as well, right? So we are trying to estimate how much is the statewide damage. Currently, the department compensates of the order of 50 to 100 crores per year. Okay, but our estimate for the entire state is of the order of 1000 to 5000 crores per year. This is what directly the animals damaged. There are a number of reasons of indirect loss. By what I mean by indirect loss is either farmers have given up farming because of the menace or they have given up seasons, right? So where both kharif and rabi is possible, farmers only take kharif. Of course, there is greater chances of loss during the rabi season because in monsoon there is a lot of forage in the wild as well. As post monsoon the crunch begins, animals are more keen to raid the crops. Okay, so rabi always has greater damage than kharif, and therefore in many areas where the risk of damage is high, farmers have given up rabi. In many places farmers have entirely given up agriculture. Okay. Then in many places where irrigation has reached, now they can afford to take cash crops, but they can't because there is wild boar. Okay, so because of reduced investment, because the crop patterns have been changing, and also because farmers are afraid of attending the farm at times where there has been human killing by tigers at times. Although it is widely known that generally tigers don't attack humans, but there can be an outlier. Some individual tiger becomes attacker, becomes aggressive, if not man-eater all the time. And whenever there is such an animal around, farmers are afraid to do their agriculture duties. Now this leads to a loss. Now all these are indirect losses, and right now our estimate is the combined direct and indirect loss amounts to rupees 20,000 to 35,000 crores per year in Maharashtra state alone. So it's a big problem and a widespread. So now we are saying that this problem cannot be left to the wildlife department alone, because there are the cropping patterns are changing. Farmers are reducing their investment from intensive agriculture. There is a loss of productivity, and therefore the problem goes beyond a wildlife problem. It is an agriculture problem, it is a state's economics problem, and therefore we have to look at this from multiple angles. And uh, several government departments need to own the problem and address. Now, currently, as I said, there is a compensation a law, there is a GR, there is a procedure on how compensation can be done, but there are a number of problems with this compensation practice. And there are complaints from the farmers as well as complaints from the forest department staff who implement this procedure. The complaints are about, from the farmer side, that there are no standard format or guidelines for launching a complaint. So farmers often do not know what to do if I want to launch a complaint. Uh, which documents need to be attached, and then why repeatedly the same documents have to be attached if I have repeated damage. Okay. Procedure everywhere are not the same. The GR says that farmers should give evidence that there is damage, but what is the nature of evidence is not specified. Hmm. Then there are excessive efforts to file a complaint. So because of a number of problems, farmers are reluctant and they just don't go to launch a complaint. But there are equal number of complaints from the field staff of the forest as well, right? That the procedure is too hectic for the field staff. Hmm? Then they have to spend so much time in validating, doing panchanamas of the damage, that when would they do the real forest work? The forest staff is for forest work, not for agricultural work. But right now they are burdened too much with these complaints. So there are complaints from the farmer side, there are complaints from the forest department side, legal problems in this entire procedure as well. Okay, because of which the current protocol of compensation simply does not work. And the most important thing is, the forest department says, in a way justified, that we will only compensate damage caused by wildlife. Okay, so we are not responsible for droughts and floods and diseases and other kinds of crop loss, which is okay. But can you really segregate wildlife damage from other causes of damage? And there are big problems, because if the monsoon is bad, then herbivores have less forage growing in the wild, so they are more keen to attack crops. Okay. So on the other hand, um, um, if there is a risk of damage, then farmers are less likely to spend on fertilizers and they lose. Now, do we call this damage due to wild animals or not? Okay, so we cannot really segregate wild herbivore damage from other causes of damage, and therefore the forest department saying that we will only compensate for wildlife damage, there is no objective way to know. So what are the possible solutions? One possible solution is improve the existing compensation procedure. The other is to look for an alternative system to the current compensation procedure. The third is try to prevent animals from breeding crops, which is extremely difficult, but one can always make attempts to do that. And the fourth is the limit wild animal population. Now this is something which will have to be done ultimately. Currently, the public opinion is not in favor, but at some stage this will have to be addressed directly. Okay. Now what we are addressing currently is whether there can be an alternative to the compensation scheme that is being implemented today, and it is obviously not working. Now what should be an ideal compensation, right? So it should be fair, There should be fairness and justice. It should encourage farmers' inputs and efforts. The worry is if you liberously help farmers, they might become lazy and they might just stop growing anything because the government is giving you something ready-made. Okay. So there should not be a free lunch to anyone. It should not be too lucrative so that outsiders come and settle near wildlife parks because the government is helping too much. Okay, so it has to be realistic and it should be corruption free, something that looks like a dream. Is there any system which is corruption free? But we'll address this. And then, in fact, the solution is if you have a system which is behaviorally sound, okay, that is which is the based on the assumption of selfish motives. If you build a system which will work well if everyone behaves selfishly, then that will be the most robust system, and our attempt is to build such. Okay, so the alternative system that we are trying to suggest and implement as well is called support come reward. So we stopped calling it compensation, we call it support come reward now because it's a support proportionate to the average deficit in productivity in an area, and then it is a reward because it is proportionate to an individual farmer's productivity. So a farmer who can show good productivity in spite of the wildlife risk, in spite of the damage risk, is rewarded proportionate to his productivity, right? So rather than compensating for the damage, we are saying that we are rewarding you for being productive in spite of the risk of the damage. So the underlying principle is we do not estimate the damage or the loss of a single farmer. We estimate the damage at a group level, okay, at a zone level. And so we can decide just next to the forest would be a high risk zone, there would be an intermediate risk zone, there would be a low risk zone, okay, and farmers sharing the same crop and in the same risk zone make a voluntary group. And this group is the unit. Individual farmer is not the unit for this. Now, the main frame is, now you will find a formula and a mathematics there, but there is no need to go into the mathematics. We can explain in simple terms that you look at the average productivity of the farmers in that zone, and look at how much is the average less than the expected average for this area. So you give aid or a support which is proportionate to the average deficit in productivity. But for individual farmers, so for example, it turns out to be 30% deficit. So you are going to help 30% to all farmers. But 30% of what? For individual farmer, you give 30% of what the farmer has grown. So someone who has not grown anything is not going to get anything. And a farmer who is more wise and takes more efforts to grow and care and protect the farm will get more, right? So you are giving in proportion to what is the average loss in that area, but you are also giving in proportion to what a farmer's efforts are, right? So productivity is encouraged and you give more rewards to the farmers who are more productive. Well, how does the data for this come? The data comes from farmers self-reporting their produce and their neighboring farmers doing the panchanamas and say that okay, this farmer is reporting honestly. Now, how do we trust their honesty? Now, if we are going to give something based on the data that they have reported, is it not possible that they will manipulate the system and they will show too much of loss and the government has to pay through the nose? Now, this is unlikely to happen, and that is because a farmer underreporting the produce is at loss simply because you give proportionate to what he has reported. Okay, so one who reports less gets less reward. That's number one. So they are unlikely to underreport. What happens if they overreport? If they overreport, then the average deficit reduces. Okay, if one farmer overreports, then there is an individual advantage in over-reporting. But if one over-reports, all others would be tempted to over-report. And if everyone over-reports, the average deficit reduces, so nobody gets anything, right? So you are at a loss if you under-report. You are at a loss in some other way if you over-report. So the only beneficial way is to be honest. Okay, now this is a subject of mathematics, statistics and experiments, and we are doing both mathematics as well as experiments with this. All this comes under a theory in mathematics and economics which is called game theory. Okay, and these game theory solutions say that in this particular game, honesty is the most stable strategy. Okay, so we expect people to be honest in reporting. Okay, so because there is honesty, we ensure a realistic data, and therefore realistic compensation is possible. Then there is a reward for greater productivity, which we expect to increase efforts, investment in the productivity, and because of the reliability, you will keep on accumulating reliable data year after year. Then, because farmers operate it themselves, there is minimum manpower requirement, and because there is no bargaining for compensation, the your animal syndrome would be in check. What we mean by your animal syndrome is naturally the farmers have this mindset that these animals belong to nature, and it doesn't matter if our 5%, 10%, 15% goes to nature. They can't afford 50% or 60% going, but 5%, 10% everyone is tolerant, and they feel that animals belong to nature, so nature takes it away. But if you have to bargain for compensation with someone, with the forest department, then it becomes your animal, my field, and your animals have caused damage to my field. Now here we are saying that in this scheme there is no bargaining. The farmers collect the data and automatically the reward is calculated by the computer. No middleman involved. So no bargaining involved. Now, this is okay as an idea, as a game theory and fantastic mathematics and so on. Does it work in reality? Now, this is the main challenge on which we have been working for the last 3 years. We started implementing on a pilot scale in 2 villages from 2017 onwards, which are Wadala, Tukum and Viloda in the buffer zone of Tadoba. And we are actually trying to see whether it works, in the sense that whether farmers report honestly and whether their productivity and efforts really go up. And we have been doing this for 3 years now. Now 6 seasons just completed and the 6 season data is just in hand. So what is the outcome? We see that there is an enthusiastic participation from farmers. Not only that, initially I was worried that there is some mathematics involved, there is some intricacies involved, and whether farmers would understand the mathematical principles. It turned out that although they may not understand the formal mathematics, they do understand the concepts and the spirits behind the mathematics, which is enough. Okay. Then, initially, we had to do the research group and the implementation group, the NGOs involved, had to take a lot of initiative. Slowly, we are handing over to the farmers, and farmers are willing to learn and learn to organize the whole thing and run the show entirely on their responsibility. Then, we expected honesty. In the first season, there were a few attempts. In the first season, there were 38 farmers, and there were 6 attempts to manipulate, either under-report or over-report, trying to get an extra advantage. They soon realized that this doesn't work. In the second season, there was only one farmer trying to manipulate the system. From the third season onwards, there is absolutely no attempt. Okay, so the self-reporting, the panchanamas by other farmers, and has been going on very smoothly. And most important, the increase in productivity that we saw is amazing. Okay, is much beyond expectation. What you see here in all these graphs is how it grew in the during the background years and the 3 years that we have been implementing. For all crops and all seasons, there is an increasing trend. Well, partly this could be because there was good rainfall, but what you see on the right hand side is the yield relative to the district average. The district average is the blue line that goes across, right? Now, rice has always been good in this area, and rice has crossed the district average. Now, in this area, we are getting better than the district average. For Rabi crops, and because wildlife damage is more for the Rabi crops, farmers in this area were actually getting much less than the district average, but they have started improving, competing, and matching the district average now. Okay, still there is damage. Okay, so initially the damage was substantial. They were getting only 20% of the potential. Now they have come up to 60 or 70% of the potential. So the productivity is increasing. What has happened to the animals? The animals remain the same. The population has not declined, the rates have not declined, but now farmers have become more aware, more motivated to grow, okay, and protect, and that has resulted into 2 to 2.5 fold increase in the productivity. So, what goes behind this productivity rise? So, one thing is we have said that more than animals eating or destroying crops, faced with the risk, farmers were disinvesting from the farms, and that was the main cause of loss. Now, given assured a support, they feel like investing more. They take more efforts. They don't hesitate to spend on the necessary fertilizers, labor, and other expense. Okay. So, on the one hand, that has increased. On the other hand, you are incentivizing productivity by giving rewards proportionate to their produce. Okay. The third thing is a competitive spirit, the spirit of coming together. So every month, as you see here, every month there is a meeting, sometimes on the farm, sometimes in the school of the village, and so on. They meet almost every month, and then they discuss. There is a competitive spirit because they compare each other's produce. Then they learn from the ones who have shown excellent productivity. Okay, so that a complex of all that has increased the productivity dramatically. One particularly remarkable example is the use of solar fences. Okay, now solar fences were available in this area. The forest department and the eco development committees or EDCs have been distributing solar fences. Sometimes they did it free of cost, then they did it at a highly subsidized price. But in spite of all that, when we started the experiment, only 10% or so were using solar fences, right? Now, as we started this scheme, there was greater motivation. We made solar equipment available to them at the same subsidy that forest department and EDC was giving. But now there was a psychological intervention, there was a behavioral intervention. The support come reward increased the motivation, and within 3 years the percentage came from 10% to 100%. Okay, solar fences is not the ultimate solution. Animals do um, come in irrespective of fencing efforts, but the fencing efforts show that the farmers have a substantially increased motivation to grow and protect. Now, so far we have been implementing this mostly manually, but if this has to be scaled up, that cannot be done. Okay, so implementation on a larger scale needs a system and software development and a support. The entire system should be automated so that farmers can operate it themselves through a simple mobile app. Okay, so when you take the harvest, you just have to enter how many quintal, how many bags full you took from so how much area, And farmers can do this just based on a mobile app. The data would be automatically collected. The other calculations and everything could be completely automated. There is no middleman. And if there is no middleman and no human decision making, then the scope of corruption ends there. Okay. Also, we have to think of all possibilities of fraud and block them right in the system itself. Now, this work is going on. This is an ongoing work. What is being done and what is the future path is this, that this is so we have demonstrated a principle called support come reward, which is game theoretically stable and which can be applied to all kinds of damages. Now, why only crop damage? Why can't we imply such a scheme to all kinds of disasters? Then it could be a substitute for crop insurance entirely. Okay. Then this kind of behavioral economics intervention can be used as a platform on which you can introduce different technologies and agrobiological interventions and practices. Okay. Because if you want the farmer to try out something new, then they perceive a risk that it may not work. Okay. Now you can cover this risk with a support come reward. So there is a baseline assurance given, at the same time an incentive for productivity given, and this might result into better farmer response to any new technology that you introduce, right? Then the government as it is spends huge amounts of money in subsidies, loan waivers and other schemes for farmers. If the same amount of money is uh, is mediated through a support come reward system, the same amount of money would help increasing agricultural productivity all throughout the state. You can use the same system for boosting organic farming as well. Okay, so the system that we could think of and implement and demonstrate its effect on productivity has a much wider application and implication. And the future path should go towards this application, which includes development of a system, the necessary software, the necessary mobile apps, advocacy, creating political awareness, because ultimately the decision will have to be a political decision. And we feel that being a very fundamentally pro agriculture, pro farmer idea, political parties should look beyond party politics and support and implement such a system. There is a long way to go to write the policy, write the law in proper legal terms, get the bill through the democratic process. That is on the one hand. On the other hand, you will have to train the farmer, or at least representatives from different villages, different taluks of the entire state, on how to use this system, how to use the mobile apps developed, and how to take advantage of this new system that is building up. And it is important that we build up this system in steps, scale up slowly. So we implemented in 2 villages, maybe then implement to one wildlife area, one national park, then extend it to others. Ultimately, you may extend it to the entire state. But every time you go through a scale up stage, you might learn and improve and refine the system. Okay, so let the system not completely designed but evolve through this scale up process. So a combination of intelligent design and evolution, okay, is I think something that would ultimately work. So a success, I would call it a success story on a small scale, on a pilot scale, but it needs to be a success story on a wider scale, and still a lot of effort, a lot of wisdom, a lot of collective action is required. Thank you very much.